What if I told you that one simple system brings me over $5,421 every single month in guaranteed rent without chasing tenants, getting late night maintenance calls, or touching a single short-term rental platform ever again? And with the right market data and a process that is honestly more straightforward and simple than most people think, it is easier than ever to get started in Section 8 investing. My portfolio and the investors that I have helped are building real generational wealth using this exact same approach. One of my old clients, Joe, who is actually an OG investor, had a Section 8 tenant that stayed in his property so long that the rent from just that one tenant alone has paid off his mortgage entirely. So he now owns that property free and clear. Another client, Valerie, consistently gets paid 120% of what the usual market rate rent is, even in a city like Washington, D.C., where rents are already generally high. But the difference is her rent is guaranteed every month. And that is the wealth plan that most people miss when they think Section 8 is only a headache or something that's going to cause you problems. And that wealth plan is what I want to show you how to build today. I'm Nana, a former real estate attorney who used to host over 20 Airbnbs, but then I burnt out and I completely pivoted to Section 8 investing. I was able to build a $1 million rental portfolio in just under 2 years while staying at home with my 2 babies that I had back to back, all in my 40s. And in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the exact step-by-step process I used to get here so you can do it too. Even if you're starting from scratch or just considering making a switch from whatever current real estate strategy you're doing right now. And to make this even easier for you, I built a free Section 8 payment estimator and retirement calculator so you can plug in your actual zip code and the type of property that you have to see exactly how much Section 8 would pay you in your market and how many properties you would need in order to replace your current income or just fully retire. The link is in the description below. Go ahead and grab it now so that you can use it as we go along in this video. And you'll especially want to have it for step 1. So the first step in your plan is that you want to go ahead and find your market. The very first thing you want to do before you even list your property or go out and buy one is figure out whether Section 8 actually makes financial sense for you. And the answer is not the same everywhere. So to do this, you could go to HUD.gov and look up your fair market rents in your area, or again, to make it easier for you, you can use the free payment estimator that I created below. It will give you what they're paying in your specific zip code, and that number is your starting point for everything. So what you're looking for here is a market where the fair market rents is high relative to what your mortgage and expenses are on your property or what properties actually cost to buy. The gap between what the government will pay you and what your expenses are is where your cash flow lives. So plug those numbers into the free calculator and it will show you not just what your monthly cash flow is gonna be, but also what that will compound to over time for your retirement. So whether your goal is to retire in, say, the next 10, 15, 20 years, or tomorrow, like it is for me, a lot of landlords are actually surprised to discover Section 8 would pay you more than what the current market rates are going for right now, with the added bonus of that payment, or at least most of it, being guaranteed rent. Step 2 is going to be to understand how the Section 8 program actually works. Here's where a lot of people get tripped up because they're working off fear, myths, and oftentimes secondhand horror stories instead of actual information. So let me give you the real deal. Section 8, officially called the Housing Choice Voucher Program, is administered by HUD as well as your local public housing authority, or PHA. So when a voucher holder decides to rent your property, the government pays a guaranteed portion of that rent directly to you every single month. And that's gonna depend on your specific market as well as the tenant's voucher and what they have to pay. So the government's portion can be anywhere from, say, 80 to 100% of the rent. And that guaranteed portion is what makes this such a valuable program, because not only are you providing affordable housing when there is an absolute affordability crisis in this country, regardless of whether you're low income, high income, or in between, and you as a landlord are getting the bulk, if not all, of your rent guaranteed. Because listen, Section 8 has paid landlords during the Great Recession of 2008, during all of the past and recent government shutdowns. They paid during 2020 and everything that was happening then, and even through the different administration shakeups and changes that have been proposed, Section 8 has continued to pay on time guaranteed. So for example, back in 2020, when I had all those Airbnbs and the lockdowns first hit, Airbnb actually decided to refund all of the guests 100% of their money. Understandably, because you couldn't go anywhere. But as a Section 8 host, that was thousands of dollars in revenue just gone overnight. And I was sick to my stomach, as well as most of the other hosts. But I had one client who only had one Airbnb, but all of his other properties were actually Section 8 rentals. And he was chilling. He was cool as a fan while all of us were still panicking. And that was when I realized that I had all of my eggs in the wrong basket. So your next action step here is simple. Call your local public housing authority. Ask them 3 things. How active is the voucher waitlist in your area? How many people are on it? What is the actual landlord onboarding process for that office? And what does the inspection timeline look like? One phone call will tell you more about your local Section 8 office and market than hours of just trying to Google it all. And it's going to help you start to build a relationship with your public housing authority early that is going to make everything else easier later on down the line. The next thing you want to do is to start to make data-driven decisions. So more than anything, you want to make sure your property cash flows. Appreciation is nice, and you definitely want to make sure you have a property that is taking advantage of appreciation, because a lot of times that's where your long-term wealth lives. But having cash flow every single month is what's going to help you be able to actually keep and sustain your property now and make it all worth it month to month. So for those data-driven decisions, you want to focus on how much Section 8 will actually pay you, minus your mortgage, taxes, insurance, and let's say a 10% buffer for maintenance as well as vacancy. If you decide to hire a property manager, you want to take that amount out as well, whatever you pay them every single month. And as a side note, I still self-manage my Section 8 rentals because I created a system that helps me run everything on autopilot with less than an hour a month of work, if that. And you can find my automated Section 8 landlord system in the description box below with everything that I do to make it all run smoothly. Now, so if you run the numbers and it doesn't cash flow, it's really just not worth your time. You don't want to be in the negative and in the red every single month with rental property. This is not where you play games, okay? Because, cash flowing anywhere from $300 to $600 a month or more, it might sound small until you begin to multiply it by 12 months over the course of a year, and then multiply it by, say, 5 properties over time. That's anywhere from $18,000 to, say, $36,000 a year in income that you did not have to actively work for. And that's the magic of it all. So for me, I want to be lazy AF when it comes to real estate. And this makes it 90 to 95% or more passive. And that is the way that I want to live. Step 4 is going to be to get your property listed and your paperwork in order. Once you have a property that passes the numbers test, it's now time to list your property and attract Section 8 tenants to actually apply. So you want to list on platforms where Section 8 tenants are actually going to be looking. That's platforms like affordablehousing.com, Zillow, etc. And you want to make sure your listing looks nice. Don't just throw up anything that looks like you put no effort into it. And especially, please don't post pictures that are lazy and really look like stranger danger, okay? You don't want that. Something that I definitely took away from my Airbnb days and my time as a host is the better your property listing looks, your description, your photos, etc., the better you will attract people to actually apply. And typically, I have found that I usually also get better applicants as well. So now that you've listed your property and you're starting to get applicants, you can actually start showing your property and meeting potential tenants. That is going to bring us to step 5. Screen your tenants like your financial future depends on it, because it does. This is the step that makes or breaks your entire Section 8 experience and really your experience as a landlord, period. And I want to be very direct about this. I continue to say this over and over again. Section 8 provides the voucher, but they do not pick the tenant for you, okay? That is your job as an investor and as a landlord. And I will also say this over and over again. Your Section 8 voucher does not make someone a good or a bad tenant. Your screening process does. So you need to look at things like credit history, what their real rental history is, how they were at their previous properties. You want to check for things like references, as well as their income verification for any portion of the rent that the tenant is responsible for paying. Because a lot of times Section 8 tenants do have a portion they pay because they are working and they often do have a job. And you want to make sure you do the same thing for every single applicant consistently. A lot of the landlords who have Section 8 horror stories and the landlords who thrive are often doing everything the same except for this one step. And the ones who thrive have a real screening criteria that they apply without emotion every single time. The ones with horror stories, a lot of times they skip this part or they were just lazy with it. And I actually have the exact tenant application and lease that I use in all of my properties in the description below if you want a starting point that is already built for Section 8 specifically. Step 6 is going to be to build the system that makes it 95% passive. So once your tenant is placed, your job now shifts from setup to building a system. And this is the part most people underestimate. The goal is not just to have a Section 8 tenant with guaranteed rent, which is great, of course, like let's make sure we do that. But the real long-term goal is to build a machine that runs successfully without you having to be in it 24/7. I often share how my husband says he always forgets we actually have tenants and even rental property until the rent gets paid and he sees the deposit notifications. And that is what you want. You want to build a system that works for you on the back end so well that it's not something you have to think about every single day once you've got it up and running. So that looks like having a system for things like onboarding and moving tenants in, how tenants should actually communicate with you as a landlord, how they should be submitting their maintenance requests, your team of contractors that help you maintain the property, your paperwork, etc. Having these things set up and optimized will make running your Section 8 rentals so much easier. And even if you decide to outsource to a property manager, having a real criteria for how you want your property run will make even having a property manager that much better. Because let me tell you, not all property managers are good. So you need to know what to be looking for, and having this criteria set up will help you do just that. And then the last step, step 7, is going to be to stack, repeat, and scale. So here's the math I want you to sit with. My portfolio averages around $600 a month per property, and some do over $1,000 a month in cash flow. So if you have 5 properties, that's $3,000 to $5,000 a month in income that hits whether you work that day or not. And that is what helped replace my attorney income and allowed me to stay home with my babies for almost 3 years. Those babies are in daycare now because mama needed some of her brain cells back. But that is what $5,421 a month in Section 8 rent actually looks like in real life. And this plan is how you get there. So go back to your market data after you've got that first tenant in and look at deals or properties you're considering with everything you now know in mind. You've got an inspection under your belt. You know what the Section 8 contract looks like. You've had that signed. You have a tenant in place. You know what it feels like to start getting guaranteed rent hitting your bank account every single month. So you want to use that experience to move faster and even smarter on the next deal. So you start with one property, you figure out your system, you prove the concept, and then you use the cash flow and the equity you have built ahead and fund the next one. So you're building this one property at a time. That is the system that works when you work it. So the real question is, what have you been thinking about during this video? Have you been thinking, okay, I get it, one day I'm gonna start Section 8 investing, but I wanna keep watching more and more videos like this? Or did you actually decide that today is finally going to be day one for you? You're finally going to take action and you're finally going to start making guaranteed rent money from your own Section 8 rental properties. Either way, be sure to grab the free Section 8 payment estimator and rentals to retirement calculator in the description below and plug in your numbers today so you can see exactly what Section 8 could pay you in your area and how fast it could potentially replace your income so you could hopefully retire. Because now that you've learned how myself and some of my clients are making around $5,000 or more per month from their Section 8 rentals, you might be wanting to learn even more about Section 8, tenant applications, leases, guaranteed rent, and how to get started. But how do you actually do that? Well, it all starts with watching this next video here, because when you pair that with what you just learned in this video, it's going to be even more powerful. So see you in the next video. Bye.